you ever seen me doing that? It's because I'm playing with my penis.
Is that what you're doing in meetings then? I thought you were just fucking insane. Like that?
So, welcome back to Talking Candid, the world's #1 podcast for all of your marketing news and conversations about death. So, how is everyone?
You're not wrong there, to be honest. So
How are you, Mr. Vernon?
I'm all good. Well, I didn't come on the last episode, and it was really nice, actually. It was nice to take a bit of a breather and actually watch the episode from a viewer's perspective, because obviously I was editing them previously. Now Alicia's taken that over, so it was actually really enjoyable.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting when you said that, actually, that because you weren't in it, you actually watched it for the first time.
Yeah.
Properly, I mean.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite interesting.
Because when you, obviously being part of the podcast and then editing it, you watch it several times. So by the time you finish, you're kind of fed up of it and you want to move on. So when it all comes out and everyone's watching it, you're like, I don't really want to like listen to it anymore.
I thought you were nicer to us this week. It's probably because you're not sick of our voices.
Yeah.
Some actors never watch their own films, do they?
No, I
reason.
think that's for the same reason. I understand it now because they also get involved in the editing process sometimes.
And they've probably done 20 takes of a scene that we think is brilliant, and then they watch it back, they're like, I thought take 17 was better.
Yeah.
It'd be stuff like that, won't it?
They're just done with it.
Yeah, I get it. I get it, especially in like an action film.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm still a bit salty.
Yeah?
Yeah.
About what?
Not got a desk.
The desk.
This was your fault. What did he say? Go on. He said, we put the desk in because we're growing and we're running out of space, and we was going to convert the breakfast bar into a desk. And so we bought 2 desks so that me and Aaron could sit on a desk, and then Giuseppe and Jake could sit at a desk, and then all of your team could sit at your desk. And then we put it in there, and he goes, that looks bleep.
It did.
And then you sat at the you sat there, but you looked really unhappy. And then when we had a meeting and all the meeting rooms were being used, we moved it into another room and thought, well, he doesn't want it anyway.
Yeah, you actually did say, keep it there because I don't want it.
That's your fault.
Yeah. Well, that's when the massage lady was in, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
we had the masseuse in.
Yeah. I missed that.
You did. It was really good.
It was really good.
It was really good.
It's hard doing a meeting afterwards though, when you're so zen and you're just like,
Yeah.
really nice.
Did anybody get my slot? Did anybody double up?
No, they didn't.
Damn,
no,
I would have doubled up.
I think we just got longer duration, or maybe we just got charged the same. I don't know.
We need to tag her in this, actually, because I think she's brilliant.
She did tag us in on LinkedIn
So
post.
good.
Did you see it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Yeah, she's brilliant, isn't she?
She's
She's
brilliant.
dead nice as well.
Really nice. Really relaxing. Yeah.
Yeah.
she's
Tell
really
you what, when we're a team of 100, she'll be a full-time employee. That's the aim. Some companies have full-time masseuses, don't they?
They do.
That's
the
so cool.
dream.
I'm stressed. You go into the room and they've got their own massage room, and it's like, just get a massage.
Yeah. It is a good idea.
It is.
Yeah. Goal for 2025 then.
Yeah.
Let's do
Let's
it.
get
I'd say so.
2024 out of the way first. So what have you been working on?
I've been working on a lot of website migration projects over the past 2 months, and they're all kind of coming to an end now. It seems that when you've got a website migration project, they all come at once. We've got about 5 on the go at the moment, haven't we? So there's a lot of stress, a lot of hard work within the team, but once the new website's gone live, it's so rewarding. So
Yeah. What is it? What is a website migration?
So a website migration, for anybody who doesn't know, is essentially when you either re-platform, you change the domain name, or you change your website in any way. You're moving from A to B. So from an SEO perspective, the main aim is to just protect any current visibility that you've got, and also to ensure that the new website structure aligns with SEO best practices. So there's a lot of reviewing the content, reviewing the structures of the website, and looking for opportunities to improve whilst also maintaining everything. So
Yeah. So this might be a silly question to you, but if I change my domain, do I lose all the work I've done in SEO for the old domain?
If you don't have an SEO agency in place or somebody looking at your SEO, then yeah, you will lose it.
Okay.
Because the main thing that you need to consider is your redirects. So there are 301 redirects, and you're essentially telling search engines that a URL has moved from A to B. So without them in place, any backlinks that you've built, any authority that that page has, you're not telling Google to pass all of that across to the new URL.
Okay.
So I've seen in the past where people haven't implemented redirects and their traffic has just taken a nosedive after the migration has launched. So
Okay, so that's the risk then, essentially, of
that's
doing
a big risk, yeah.
it. Okay.
You should. So throughout my history, I've seen, and I'm sure Haley would be the same. There's so many companies that they'll have a site that's performing really well from an organic perspective, whether they know it or not. You know, because sometimes if you're producing good content and you're following best practices, you can have like some existing rankings for keywords, and then they rebrand, new website, and then they migrate. And with a dev agency, and it's so frustrating hearing it, but the dev agency is like, oh yeah, we know how to do the redirects and SEO, and we're going to follow best practices. And I'm sure they try their best, but it's not how we would approach it, because the way we approach it is very proactive in the sense of, okay, well, what content is changing? How is the hierarchy changing? And how will that impact the site? It's not just about the redirects and, you know, making sure that the site is just migrated properly. That's just like a normal checklist. It's about thinking about building the new site with best SEO practices in mind, but also maintaining what you've got. And you know, we've got the battle scars to prove more than anyone of seeing businesses that have made that mistake where they've just migrated and they've come to us and said, we've lost all of our rankings, the traffic's dropped, you know, we've got this beautiful new website and this beautiful new brand, but nothing is ranking anymore. And they're like, we need you to work with us to try and recover some of this. And then there's other cases where companies are very proactive and they approach us and they're like, okay, well, we're migrating and we've thought about getting an SEO agency involved because our dev said they can do it, but we don't really trust them. And then we can start to properly map out how that's going to be done from, you know, a technical perspective and a content perspective. But some businesses have lost millions of pounds just from making that mistake of not having an SEO look over that process.
What would be a good stage to bring us in then, let's say?
So I'd say that just from the very beginning. So when you're starting to plan your website project, what I'd recommend doing is doing an audit of the existing website so that you can identify any issues that we don't want to be carried over, so that you can identify where the current rankings are, how the URL structure is, what content's performing well, what isn't, what needs to be removed. So when it comes to the design and the build stage, all of your SEO elements are considered. Like, I've seen websites previously where they've relaunched, they've rebranded, and they've created new pages. They've changed the content, but they've not thought about conversion points on the page. No. It just looks like a blog.
Yeah.
And that can have a detrimental effect on your conversions as well, which is just as important. So having us from the very beginning will just mitigate any risk, because that's essentially what we're doing, isn't it? It's we're identifying risks and doing like a risk analysis before the website goes live so that we can protect and build as much as possible.
Yeah, so it makes sense. So, different analogy, when you're moving house, you don't take all your crap from your loft with you. You get rid of it before you move.
Yeah, exactly.
Because essentially, in a layman's point of view, that's probably a good way to look at it. It's almost like a fresh start, is it?
It is a fresh start to an extent, but what I'd advise is that, say you've got first position rankings for your dream keywords, and then you want to migrate to a new website, you can be tempted to then start picking apart the content and changing it. But it's ranked first for a reason. So if you start making those like significant changes, the new website goes live, why aren't we ranked first anymore?
Yeah.
That's because you no longer fit into what Google deems to be first position worthy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's getting rid of all of the crap. Like if you've got rubbish blogs from 2010 about your business and that aren't really well written, get rid of them because they're not serving a purpose. But anything that is worth saving, save it, maintain it, pretty much carbon copy it, but in a sleeker, better UX.
Okay. What's sort of the worst case scenario then if it's not done properly? Aside from losing traffic and a load of money, can somebody get that back?
They can, but it's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
So if you lose your rankings, you can competitors are going to take your place. And it can be the case that you never regain, you never get back to the traffic levels that you once previously had, no matter what you throw at it. Because what happens is Google will re-index your website, all of your pages, and then they reassign keyword rankings. It's something that we've experienced recently with somebody who we've just kind of started working with. They have not followed best practice. They've lost rankings, and it's really hard to regain them once you've lost them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite a sad story because you're picking up the pieces for something that did really well for a business once, and just because they made that mistake of not considering like how SEO is going to play a part in that migration, because it's so overlooked, that you lose everything and it's too late. And then you'll approach an SEO agency and go, okay, well, we need to rebuild here, and that's a really difficult position to be in, because like Hayley said, if competitors are going to overtake those rankings that you once had, they're also going to notice that you've dropped off the radar, and they'll just start putting effort. And to rebuild something via Google when you've changed everything, and I'm talking content hierarchy, technical specs, conversion points, it's a mammoth task, and it can cost a business way more, and I'm probably talking about like 20 to 100 times more than you would just paying an SEO agency to be part of the migration process. Yeah. And we're quite famous really for migrations, because we've had a blog on our site. I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, but it's constantly updated every year, isn't it? It's a guide to migrations. And we get a lot of marketing managers and MDs and CEOs who will read our blog on like the best practices to follow. And obviously it's a lot of work. So then they contact us and they say, we really need an expert to look at this. And I think that's done us amazing in terms of lead generation for migrations. And I feel like it's like one of our key specialities as well.
Yeah, and I really think that's because, there's a lack of awareness as to what goes into an SEO migration. It's not just a case of implementing your redirects and hoping for the best. You've got to look at everything and make sure that you really bring in the quality.
Yeah.
I mean, from an agency perspective, you take a benchmark of all of the data, like your sessions, your conversions, your rankings, pre-launch, and then post-launch. If you've made loads of changes against best practice, if you've changed the content, the hierarchy, URL structure, everything that you could possibly change, then there's no accurate benchmark as well, because it's just not the same. So you can't see where the issues are actually coming from. So
yeah, I understand.
Be problematic.
That. I understand that. So what would your advice then be, I guess, for both of you? If I walk into our office now and I go, look, I'm looking to do this, I'm rebranding, let's say, what do I need to do? I've got a dev agency I want to use. What would your advice be?
I think from my perspective, it needs to be a partnership between the company that is rebranding and getting a new website, the developer and the SEO agency. Doesn't matter what the developer says in terms of how capable they are in terms of SEO. I'm not a big believer in that you can be a specialist in dev and design, as in building websites, and also be the best of the best in SEO. Usually for dev companies, and we love dev companies, we love design companies, and they do a great job. But usually it's just one of these upsell add-ons, whereas from our perspective, it's our niche, it's what we do, it's what we specialize in.
Yeah, the SEO landscape changes too much too often, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. And it becomes, extra revenue that a dev agency can generate, but it's not necessarily the right thing. So I think first and foremost, for any company that approaches us and tells us that kind of scenario, it's like, well, in the first place, why are you rebranding? Why are you getting a new website? What has changed internally in terms of service offering and layout and products, if it's products, for example? And then how can that fit into what we would suggest from a data-backed perspective for how we would maintain your rankings, but also build the site better for the future for SEO?
Yeah.
And then I can imagine Hayley has a whole different perspective as well.
No, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
And I think what I would say is that sometimes changing your content is unavoidable. If it doesn't meet the requirements of your brand anymore, then you're going to need to change it. But what I would say is, if that's the case, it's against my recommendation, but I'd stagger it. So launch your website with the existing content, wait for it to be indexed, and then start changing your content. So at least then you have a track record of when changes have been made and when your visibility is impacted. It just makes it much more measurable, because it's likely that there are going to be some visibility drops, but at least you can spot for issues with the website first and foremost.
Yeah.
And then move on to content changes.
Okay.
But ultimately, if you're ranked first, you're converting well, then you need to kind of assess whether it's important or not to actually change the content on the website, on them particular pages, because I'd advised against it.
Yeah. I mean, it's potentially business critical, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So why would somebody do it?
I think, there's often a lot of different ideas in terms of like brand direction, which is understandable. If you're in charge of a brand, you want to make sure that your tone of voice is correct, that you're talking about the right things. Sometimes SEO and brand doesn't necessarily align.
Yeah.
But if you have someone from the very beginning giving the recommendations, then you can come to a kind of agreement. So that's why it's so important to have us from the beginning before it's too late and changes have already been implemented, sites have been built. So people do it because when you've got a fresh website, there's a mentality that everything needs to be fresh. And I'd say that's something that is quite common.
Yeah, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards.
Yeah, exactly. But if it works, you need to evaluate whether or not you should change it, because you're kind of solving a problem by creating new problems.
Yeah.
It may be that, your UX isn't great, but you don't want to and you're having conversion drop-offs, but you don't want to kind of cut off your kind of traffic source that will to solve UX problems. So it's about balance.
It could be a very simple action point change, couldn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It could be really simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's sometimes the problem. And it's very difficult because as a performance company, we look at the real numbers, the hard numbers, right? Similar to what an FD would look at, from like what is generating us revenue and what is moving the needle.
I'm an accountant. I don't like FDs.
Oh, you don't? Yeah. A lot of people don't, to be fair.
I'm only joking. I love them.
But, you look at the numbers and the data and you make decisions based on that as well. And I think with creatives, they, massive respect to them. They have these big visions for, the content could be even greater. It could be more in depth. It could be this. We could have these design stylistics. And you even see some creative and designers removing content to make it a little bit more simple, like Apple does with their products on their site. They don't need SEO. They're a giant brand. They need basic SEO, but they wouldn't need to compete with other brands, right?
They only actually sell about 4 or 5 core products as well, don't they, Apple, really?
Apple is mainly brand-driven, and they're a $1 trillion company.
Yeah.
They speak for themselves. So there are companies that try and be Apple when they're not on the same level, and they trying to make this thing really beautiful, and they kind of forget about what performance is on the site, how much money they're making from it, and how it's going to impact them if they do make a lot of changes. So it's about having, bridging that gap between data and creative people and making sure that there's, an agreeable solution for a migration. You want to make sure that there's a bit of a middle ground on, well, we'll keep this, we'll get rid of this. We'll make sure that this is ranking first still. And it's really difficult to do that.
Yeah, to do another analogy, it's like an architect designs a building. The builder comes in or the engineer comes in and goes, that just doesn't work.
Exactly, yeah.
It doesn't work in reality.
And those two people can fight because they've got this bit of an ego to them. They're like, oh no, well, my thing's really important and your thing's really important. But it's about working together.
Yeah.
I think as well, like, it is very black and white. There's no compromise really with website migrations. You can't go, okay, well, let's see how it goes because I know how it's going to go. Your rankings are going to drop. Your traffic's going to drop.
Yeah.
So really, like, the recommendations that we're making need to be taken seriously because it's not in our best interest. It's in your best interest as a business owner. We want to make sure that we're driving traffic, we're driving conversions, and that your website migration is successful.
Yeah.
And a mark of success is keeping your rankings. So we'll always make those recommendations.
Yeah.
I think one website migration that I noticed recently that was a bit of a fuck up is, do you know when Next acquired Made.com?
Yes.
So they got rid of the whole Made.com website and just redirected the URL to Next.
Oh, God.
So like all of the old products and the brand awareness was just like chucked away in the sense of a redirect. And then they recently went back on that decision, and now Made.com is its own website as well. So it shows you there's value in having those independent brands and those independent websites, because, you know, whilst it is fine that I guess that people get redirected to Next, Made.com had such a rich brand history and it had existing rankings that was basically just wiped overnight.
Yeah.
Rankings that Next didn't have.
If people wanted to go to Next, they'd go to Next, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't go to Made.com.
They reversed the decision completely, and instead of redirecting it, now goes to Made.com.
So they'll have definitely lost rankings then, even just from hearing that, having redirects, reversing it, because what's going to happen is Google's going to index those pages, and then you're reversing your decision. It's going to take a while for those new pages to be removed from Google's index and those original pages to be re-indexed. And in that time, your rankings will be going up and down and up and down, and maybe they won't regain some of the visibility that they previously
How
had.
long would it take on average to re-index?
So it can take between 6 weeks to 3 to 4 months
Right.
for a website migration to fully index all pages, because you've got to think it's not just your web pages. What supports rankings is backlinks.
Yeah.
You've got to wait for all of those to be indexed as well, for those to be picked up by Google. So it will definitely impact
Yeah.
visibility.
So if you're Made.com, let's say,
Yeah.
it could be $1 million a week in turnover.
We've got to start looking at what value SEO has to a business, because at the moment it's seen as this, you know, for some businesses at least, it's the thing that they pay for, but they don't fully understand what it's worth. So when you come to these big migrations, and I can imagine it's the same with this Made.com decision on redirecting it all to Next.com, because they thought, great, everyone that enters the URL directly or the brand name, it's just going to go to us. And that's amazing, because we'll get all that traffic. But no one thought about the domain authority, the brand history. There's multiple things, you know, to consider there. Also, the rankings that they had. But if you added up all of the keywords that they had top position rankings for, and you applied some calculations to conversion rates and click-through rates, you'll get a number of how much that SEO is worth on that site. And you can do that for almost every site. And people don't think about it. They just think that there's still this misconception that SEO is a dark magic, that it's something that happens and Google gives you a little wave of the wand and wishes you the top position, but it's not at all. It's a competitive game. There's loads of people in the game now.
Yes.
And it needs to have a value tied to it in the business, because if your business is worth X amount, it's worth X amount because of the value that all of your marketing channels are providing in the revenue generation, and it comes from channels like SEO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what have we learned over the last 12 months about performance marketing in general? Because it has changed quite a lot in quite a short period of time.
Yeah, but the last 12 months have definitely been significant for all digital marketing channels. I think a more collaborative approach and a more proactive approach is required for businesses to really succeed. So if you've got organic social running for brand awareness, you need to make sure that it ties in with your content strategy. Your content strategy needs to tie in with your SEO strategy. Your SEO strategy needs to work in harmony with your paid media campaigns. Your social media needs to be there to kind of drive awareness, and they all need to kind of be working in harmony. And rather than just having all of your eggs in one basket, it's good to diversify, test, but also change your strategy depending on seasonality. And I think that's something that we're really trying to hammer down on now, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think now more than ever, and this has been happening over, you know, the past couple of months, or arguably the past 12 months as well, is that it's no longer viable to look at each channel independently. Like Hayley said, they need to work together. And, you know, search benefits from having a really strong brand. Search benefits from having a good social presence. Search benefits from having a good PR presence. Search benefits from having a good paid campaign tied to it. So you can't. I mean, you can work them separately and independently, but if you're really serious, like your competitors would be, you need to be considering all of the channels and how the journey works throughout there as well. Because someone might Google something, but then they also go to social to look at reviews. They also click on some paid links to compare prices, so they can be stolen away from competitors super quick. They will look at social media channels to look at reviews and what people are saying about your brand. We're in an age now where it's not just, play something in a magazine or place a search result and people just buy it straight away. People are getting more intelligent and they're doing more research. So it's really important this year, especially if people consider all of the channels. So I agree with that.
And I think, instead of trying to tie an ROI to every single channel, say, for example, organic social, some channels need to be seen as like brand awareness.
Yeah.
And that's just as important because it helps to develop trust. So I think a lot of marketing strategies can be killed because people are too bogged down with tying everything to return on investment.
Yeah.
When in reality, it needs to be a more holistic approach where we need to think about the customer journey. Like if you're looking to buy shoes, you're going to research, you're going to click on this website, have a look at their prices, what they're like, click off, look at another. Oh, I've not seen this before. Are they a legit brand? Let's have a look on their Instagram. Oh, look, they've got quite a lot of followers. Like it just all kind of ties into the psychology of purchasing now.
Yeah. Do you think that makes it harder to sell as a service?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because, you're not just getting buying on one thing that is already for some very expensive, but it's getting buy-in on the whole lot. It's essentially hiring an entire marketing team.
Yeah.
Because, agencies operate in the sense that they are an extension of your team. At least the good ones operate in that way. And, that comes with a cost. That comes with experience, trying to find the best people. So, it's very easy as an agency, and this is what a lot of bad agencies do. They'll go gold, bronze, silver, all that stuff, and they'll sell you, £500, £1,000, £1,500, and it's just a pre-built package that someone will buy and realize after 6 months, unfortunately, it doesn't work. But you've really got to look into a bespoke solution. So strategy is always the way to start. Where are the pain points? Where is the brand? Where does the brand have challenges? Where are we losing money? Where are we gaining money? And you need to look at it from, a top level view and understand what marketing channels are going to move the needle for, any company's objectives. So it is a lot harder and it's a lot more work, but the payoff in the end when it does work is humongous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just to add to that as well, like you're building a presence, you're building like a brand essentially in the digital world. So I think that is something that perhaps like businesses need to consider when they are developing marketing strategies. It's about building that presence and consistently showing up for your digital users.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, which are the best channels then, do you think, going into 2024? Because obviously we've got X, which is obviously a rebrand. We had Threads, which came out last year. Which do you think are gonna move the needle, as you put it?
I think it really depends on the industry that we're working with and like businesses with. What my advice would be is to have a look at your demographic. Who's your target audience? And then have a look at what social channels they'll use. Typically, like Gen X and the younger generation, they're very much TikTok focused.
Yeah.
But are they the best purchasers? You've got Instagram, for kind of I was going to say our generation then. But
Getting old now.
like, mid to late 20s into your 30s. Then you've got Facebook, who's...
I'm still a millennial. I think I just caught it.
Oh, yeah.
I think so, yeah. We'll double check after.
Fair play.
We'll double check.
But the point I'm trying to make is that you've got to have a look at where your audiences are and how they're behaving, and that's going to dictate which channels you need to invest in. I'd never say, for example, an employment law client should be spending all of the time on TikTok because what are they going to gain from that? True. Even from like a brand presence perspective, that's going to get you nowhere.
Yeah.
So that's my advice, really.
It's probably more LinkedIn or something. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
Kind
Yeah.
I think often businesses get really excited about particular channels and they go into that with the brief, and then some companies will take that brief, give a price, and they'll deliver it and find out it doesn't work out because you're missing that strategy element that Hayley mentioned. And that's a dangerous path. You know, as humans, we like what really excites us, and performance marketing specifically, in some cases, isn't the most exciting part of marketing, you know, because it's numbers, it's data, it's working on technical changes, it's working on content and blog content, which can be really exciting. And the mistake that businesses make and brands make is that they'll go for this big PR campaign. And a good example of that, and I don't know if you've both seen this ad, but have you seen that smokeless fire pit company
with Snoop Dogg?
With Snoop Dogg. The whole punchline was that Snoop Dogg's gone smokeless.
Right.
And it was a bit of funny play on his marijuana smoking and all that stuff. So in the advert, he's got this big drum, which they sell, which is a smokeless fire pit, and you set fire and there's no smoke. And they rolled out that ad creative over, and they paid a lot of money, obviously, for the influencer value. And they rolled it over across all platforms as an ad for a period of 6 months, 12 months maybe. And it failed. It got so much praise on LinkedIn as being one of the most innovative, award-winning campaigns that the company has ever done. And it was shared worldwide and it was viral and all this stuff, but it didn't translate into sales specifically. And I think there's been a lot of different opinions on why that was the case from what I'm seeing on LinkedIn. Others have argued that they didn't give it enough time because they basically fired the CEO over this and replaced him.
Okay.
Because it failed. It was like their last attempt to like really get sales in through the door.
6 months seems long enough.
It does, but brand specialists argue that it didn't have enough time to mature because people are at different buying stages throughout the year and we're in a cost of living crisis. So they argued that, well, we didn't have enough time because summer didn't roll around, so people didn't necessarily need it. And that's usually when they're like sitting outside around the fire, having marshmallows. And then others argued that it was a vanity piece with an influencer and they didn't focus more on the performance marketing side. And if they would have combined the creative with the advertising and the performance marketing, maybe it would have worked out.
Yeah, I think interestingly, because I have seen this time and time again where PR is like the sexy advertising, isn't it? And you get an idea and you can run with it, and that's the exciting thing about it. But as a standalone campaign, do you think PR works on its own?
I think 90% of the time, no. For a lot of companies, this whole Snoop Dogg was a PR thing. Let's be real. It was a marketing campaign and a PR campaign. I think a lot of money can be spent on PR, and you need to spend a lot of money, as in Snoop Dogg, Kim Kardashian, you know, those kind of famous celebrities to get the attention that you want. But, you know, if you've got a budget of 5-10K a month, it's not really going to move the needle as much. I think it supports an overall brand objective, and I would probably ask, why do you want to do PR in the first place? And look at it that way. But from what I've seen and from the opinions of experts that I've met, 90% of the time PR doesn't work.
Yeah, well, surely you've got to have the brand in the first place for PR to work, really.
If you combine PR with SEO and you combine it with good branding and a good website and a good proposition, you know, product or service, it will work. And that's why 90% fail, because they ignore the other aspects of marketing that they need to do. Because marketing teams get excited. I bet you that was pitched by an agency, this Snoop Dogg concept with a smokeless fire pit. And it's like, let's get Snoop Dogg and let's say he went smokeless. And those are like, oh my God, that's really cool. It's dead exciting. And then they signed off on this huge budget.
Which I imagine was a lot.
Yeah, and they didn't think about it.
How much is the barbecue doing? Do you know?
I wouldn't know the prices off the top of my head, but they're not cheap.
The Guy Ritchie one was like 10 grand.
It's not that much.
It's just, I think as well, like, I didn't know that it was for a smokeless fire pit until I read it on LinkedIn. So I don't think the execution of it was that good anyway, because I was just like, he stopped smoking weed. Oh my God.
That's what I thought.
I was just, but there was no, it was kind of mysterious. I think from the very beginning, they should have included the product, and they didn't do that. And without the brand awareness, the focus was more on the celebrity than it was the product. So I think execution-wise, it just flopped because they didn't consider, it wasn't well planned out.
Which was my issue with the Coca-Cola Christmas advert.
Yeah.
Because the product was only in it once, but I guess their brand was already there. Yeah. So that's the flip side of doing the hard work first, isn't it? Coca-Cola has spent 70 years. I don't know how long it's been around, building that rep so they can have an advert that just doesn't have the product in.
Yeah.
And people still know what it is. Okay, so we've obviously opened the Australia office, which we mentioned on the last pod.
Yes.
You've been doing some pitching, haven't you, this week?
Yeah. It's been really exciting because, you know, we're only at the start of the year, and we've opened the office. We've been doing our due diligence when it comes to making sure we're ticking all the boxes to make sure we're opening properly in Australia. And we've had a couple of meetings booked. You know, given those are quite late ones as well because we're UK time. You know, but we're committed to the cause, and we have clients in Australia, so we know how to deal with that. And they've been really exciting. So they've been very positive conversations about, you know, how they can work with us, and then that leads on to, you know, us going out to Australia as well to meet people in person eventually at some point this year. So for me, it's I feel really proud in the fact that I'm able to talk to people abroad and do international, because it's just the UK that we've focused on. And I think in my whole career, like aside from one or two pitches, I've not really had that opportunity. So it's really good to speak to people.
Yeah, I imagine they went quite well because, let's be honest, you do come across quite cocky. But I can't imagine that was the case at the start of your career. So can you remember your first ever pitch?
Yeah, I mean, this is going probably 7 or 8 years back, because the start of my career, as you all know, was, you know, in social media and doing the actual job. But my first pitch was, can I say the company name?
Let's not.
That's
just
not,
in case
okay.
you did a bad job.
So, so my first pitch was with a tooling company.
Okay.
So it was as boring as you can get.
Yeah.
And they were based locally to me, because the company that I worked for wasn't too far from where I lived as well. So I was aware of them. It was like a place you go by on the bus or you drive by now and then, and you think, what is that? You know, it's in an industrial estate. And that was with, you know, the MD and the founder, so there was a lot of pressure on me for that. And I had some staff from the company or agency I worked for then to support. And this was talking about a rebrand, and was talking about a new website, and then SEO and ongoing marketing. And I think comparing that back then to what I do now, back then I can remember I was just a ball of nervousness, you know, anxiety, fast. I remember the beats in my heart.
The pitch sweats.
The pitch sweats, yeah. And I can remember how fast my heart was beating, and then, you know, tripping up on your words and not saying things properly. And compared to now, just being able to take that really calmly and being able to actually help and ask thought-provoking questions, it just shows you that anything, you know, that you do over time needs a lot of work for you to be able to become good at it.
Yeah.
You know, because everyone's going to start off at that point where they're nervous.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was terrible in pictures when I was younger. I'm not great now, to be honest. No. What about yourself, Hayley?
So I was just having a think then. One of the first pitches that I was involved with was a luxury travel company.
Yep.
So this was at a previous agency.
Yep.
And yeah, I'd say the same, you know, I wasn't as confident as that I'd say I am now. But you get used to different people as the more that you pitch, don't you? And you just realise that you're just having a conversation with somebody. And what I really like about that is that they've actually followed me over to Candid Sky, because they like the way that I manage the accounts better.
Yeah.
I said what I said.
That's the best feeling. It must be, right?
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
I think what I love about it is that we've got such good performance for them. They had the best year in revenue last year ever, when the market was quite uncertain as well.
Very.
And it's just a reminder to me that, you know, from where I've started, and that I am good at SEO, and that, you know, we've maintained and improved performance. So it's cool to have like one of my very first like little clients that I've just had nurtured into this big brand, and they're still here.
Yeah, we've had haven't we had someone approach us that was at a client, left that client, and moved on to a different business, and they approached us from a new company they're working for as well. And that's the same, really, isn't it?
Yeah, they've done that. Yeah, they've done that before.
It's the same, isn't it? So obviously we've done such a good job that they're like, you know, you should go with these guys. Though.
You don't realise that, like, how long and how much people remember you from, like, say 10 years ago. You know, I've had people that I met several years ago reach out to me on LinkedIn and go, "Oh, it's really good to see what you're doing now. Like, we'll definitely stay in touch," and this, that, and the other. And we've had people reach out to us on LinkedIn and say, you know, from previous companies that we've worked with, and they've moved on to become a marketing manager somewhere else, say, you know, would you be able to jump on a call with me and talk about, you know, this problem that we're having and how you can help solve it?
Yeah.
And it's a big knock-on effect. The more people you talk to and build relationships with, they will come back time and time again in the future, and it's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is that you've really got to listen to people, what makes them tick, what their concerns are, what they're enjoying and what they're not, and just kind of adapt how you work with them. And that's how you create lasting relationships.
It's pain points, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's the big one, isn't it? If someone's speaking to you, it's because they want to, I think.
Yeah.
So obviously the Australia thing was cool. Is that your best or favourite ever pitch, with it being around the other side of the world? Or have you got others that stick in your mind?
I think it was definitely the most interesting, and it's up there. You know, I think some of my favourite pitches have been those where you know, you're talking to a company who understands what marketing is first and foremost.
It helps.
Yeah, it helps a lot.
It really does.
And those who have a really big ambition, you know, who have this big vision of like, this is who we want to be, this is where we want to get to, and you see that and you feel a part of it. You know, it's almost like you're going to go work for their company when you're not. And you're like, wow, if I can really make a big difference to this company in the sense of increasing their revenue, they'll have more employees, we'll grow, they'll grow. That's like the best feeling in the world. And I've told you this before. I've worked on a pitch with a large US company, and they had over $1 billion in revenue, opening in the UK. And they approached the agency that I worked at previously and said, we want to penetrate the UK market. We want to sell to customers there. We're doing so well in the US, but we don't know how to market to a UK audience.
Yeah.
And so we devised a plan, and long story short, we were doing all of their marketing. And that was, from an account management perspective, led by me. And they went to one of the biggest exhibition shows in the UK for the type of company that they were. And we devised a plan on how they can market themselves at that exhibition. And it worked so well that they got a contract with one of the biggest restaurant and pub chains in the UK.
Nice. Did you do the stand as well? Those?
Yeah, we did the stand.
They're
we
expensive, those, aren't
yeah,
they?
it was. Oh my God, the cost was ridiculous. It was in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, they're really dear.
And they won the biggest client in the UK in the pub and restaurant industry.
Well, that's
And
pretty
like,
cool.
I know I wasn't the one that marketed it. I know that was delivered by the teams, but having been part of the pitch, having been part of the account management, the direction, it was such a proud feeling.
Yeah, no, that's good, mate.
And it does change your life. It does make you a happier person.
Yeah, I think I like to always look at the bigger picture. So if you help a company do well, that employs staff, they have partners, children, you help so many lives, don't you? What about yourself? You got one that sticks out?
I'd say that when David and myself did a tender for a big company, we like to have this joke where we're the stepbrothers. And we go dressed in bow ties and be like, hello, Miss Lady. So that just kind of sticks in my mind because it was so out of our comfort zone, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
And it was intense and we put a lot of work into it, but it was just an interesting experience, like going and tendering for work as opposed to just creating your standard proposal where you go into data and analyse things. It was interesting. I'd say that's one of my favourite ones, but maybe it's because they're associated with stepbrothers.
And we was in this room full of loads of people. It was just us two, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hello.
And we just look at each other sometimes and like, how did we get here?
I know what you mean.
What are we doing? We're like children and all
I know
these
what you mean.
people
I know what you mean.
are big grown-ups, you know. But yeah.
They do. I think I know which one you're talking about. They do things a little bit differently at that size, don't they?
Yes. Yeah.
They do.
And I don't think we were ready for it, but we gave it a good try.
We did.
Yeah, and I remember the pitch doc actually. It's so professional, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. But it's changed the way we do things here. So
Definitely,
even though we didn't win the account, I believe we didn't win the account, did we?
No, we didn't.
No.
So it is the one I'm thinking.
Yeah.
We learned a lot from it, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. So my question is: do people like you for who you are or what you do?
Woo! So sorry, I'm diving straight in here.
Go for it.
I think about this a lot, and I feel like as I'm getting older, and like I'm becoming, you know, more successful, a lot of people will be like, wow, you're doing so well, that's amazing. And like they want to talk about my job and like, whoa, you're only young. But really, for me, I think about, well, my job's the least interesting thing about me. You know, there's so much more to me.
Yeah, we can tell when you're here.
Wow.
Bloody hell. 2 roastings in 1 week.
I know. You can put some sun cream on. So I'm really conscious about making an impact with people and showing who I am. And I think we were talking about this before, but as you get older, you want to kind of drink less and make less of a dick of yourself and like show the real you, because I'm sick of having conversations that aren't meaningful and like not showing myself and who I really am and how I tick and everything about me. So I think for me, it's a conscious effort to make sure that people see the real me, but I'm a work in progress at the moment.
Yeah. The problem you've got, I think, and this isn't an insult or a dig at all, it's because you are very career driven and very ambitious, and that's always going to be a part of you.
Yeah.
And I think you just need to be careful that it doesn't consume you, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
I think people...
Mr. Vernon's clarify for anyone that's listening.
I think people like me for who I am and then respect me for what I do.
Yeah.
And I think there's never like different ways about it. It's like there are people that you have gotten along with all your life that couldn't give 2 shits about what you do for a job or how much you earn.
Yeah.
And they'll always be like really close friends, especially with family as well. But there are people that I think I connect with who understand what I do first and foremost, but then get to really like who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think professionally, if you're really good at what you do and you really care about what you do and you know you're passionate and you get excited about other people's achievements, that's something what a lot of people miss. You know, when friends, you're like, oh, I've done this, I've achieved this. And some of them will, you know, will sit there and be like, don't really care. And they don't support you. But then when you're really down, they'll be like, oh, I'm here, I'm always here for you. You get those people sometimes. And I think it's really important to understand the difference between someone who's there to support you as an individual, both professionally and personally, and someone who's there who doesn't really like what they do themselves and they just want to see you fail. Because there are people like that in your life. And I think as I've grown older, I've sort of identified those who want to see me fail and those who want to see me succeed because they genuinely do like who I am.
Yeah.
And I can imagine you've seen that throughout your years as well. I think all of us probably have.
Yeah, because I went self-employed quite young, didn't I? You know, 26, 27.
Yeah.
And people got, you know, I got a lot of, should you be doing that? And you know, deep down, they're just wanting you to fail so they can say, oh, I told you so. It was too much of a risk. You were too young. Blah, blah, blah. I think it's an interesting question because the reason I asked it is I heard it on a podcast, but I remember, so I've been quite open that I've been in and out, well, not in and out of therapy. That sounds really bad. I do see a therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she asked me the same question, and she asked me to describe myself, and I led with work.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so she said, no, that's what you do. That's not who you are. And I thought it was a really interesting question. So who are you, Hayley? Your automatic response might be, oh, I'm a marketing director. That's not who you are. That's what you do.
Yeah.
So I think it's something quite interesting to think about, actually, because I would have always gone, oh, I'm an accountant, or I run businesses, and that's what I do. That's not who I am. So who I am? Well, I'm a father of 2. Yeah, I'm keen on martial arts. That's who I am, isn't it? So I just think it's quite interesting that a lot of people will lead with the job or the career.
Yeah, it is interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it that way because sometimes you can talk about work a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And I think when I catch up with people, they're like, oh, how's work? And then there's a bit of a reluctancy inside of me to say, oh yeah, rather than going into detail and be like, yeah, this is what we did and tell them all the good things and the bad things, just kind of like, yeah, it's okay.
So one of your mates comes up to you, for example, and you as well. They go, how are things? You go, oh, I'm really busy at work. That will be an automatic answer for most people.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's not how you are.
Nah.
Is it? It's the fact that you're busy at work. How are you? I've got a bit of a cold. You know, that's an honest answer, isn't it?
I'm crying in the shower.
Yeah, everyone goes, oh, busy.
Yeah, busy. It's like how are you? All right, you?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, I like to catch people out sometimes. You all right, Aaron? No, I'm not actually.
And they're like, oh, crap.
Yeah, just catch people out. Should we end it there because you've got to go?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're bang on time for one.